This is lesson 79 for Saxon Math Intermediate 5. This lesson, what we're doing is we're looking at making equivalent fractions by timesing the fraction by 1. So you have to remember, when we have 1 in fraction form, what makes it is that the numerator is the same as the denominator. Now, the numerator and denominator could be any number as long as they are the same. So it could be 4 over 4, 3 over 3, 20 over 20, 106 over 106, as long as they are the same. Reason is because if you have a square, and I have broken that square into 3 pieces, well, if I have one whole square, I have all my pieces filled in, which means that whatever my denominator is, my numerator has to be the same. But if we remember, this is 1. So when we're doing this with fractions, let's say I have the fraction of 1/2 and I want to make an equivalent. Well, if I have my 1, which in this case is going to be 2 over 2, or 2/2, I have the equivalent made. So I do 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. Now remember, again, we did do this in a previous lesson. I'm just going over it, just in case you've forgotten, that when you multiply, you're just going straight across. Another equivalent to half might be using the 1 3 over 3, and in which case you have 3 over 6, because you do 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6. Maybe you're going to do the equivalent of a half of using 4 over 4, or 4 quarters. Then you're going to go 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8. All of these numbers, or all of these fractions, are equivalent to a half, or they are the same as a half. I can tell this without having done this, that I know it is because 2 is half of 4, 3 is half of 6, and 4 is half of 8. The reason I'm getting an equivalent fraction, even though I'm timesing them by all different things, is because I'm timesing both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. That's why we're timesing it by 1, is that it's being times by the same number. So both the numerator and the denominator of a half are being times by the same numerator and denominator over here. Same thing here, same thing here. Both are getting times by 4, both are getting times by 3, both are getting times by 2. Because of this, I get what's called an equivalent fraction, or the same fraction, or not the same fraction, an equal fraction. So this is both equivalent or equal. When you're working on through your lessons, a lot of the times what they'll do is they'll do a question almost more like a missing number. So you have 3 quarters times something equal 6/8. Okay, now whatever this is going to make this equivalent fraction for 3 quarters. I can figure out what this is by using these two numbers. So I can do this 2 ways. I can use my times tables knowledge, and I can say 4 times what equals 8. Does that same thing times by 3 to make 6? If it does, cool, I have gotten it. If I can't do that, I don't have that times tables knowledge, I can take 8, I can divide it by 4, and I can say, okay, how many times does 4 go into 8? And I can, if you need to, you can count, and you can do 8 dots and then split them into 4 groups, or however you'd like to do it. But you will end up with 2. So you end up with a denominator of 2 because 4 times 2 is 8, and a numerator of 2 because 3 times 2 is 6. The only other type of tricky one they have for you is they actually take away another number. So we'll have 2/3 times a 1 equal to something with a denominator of 12. So in this case, you have 3 missing numbers instead of just the 2. So what I need to do first is, because I only know what this denominator is, I'm going to have to use this denominator. So what times 3 equals 12? I have my times tables knowledge. I can go, well, I know 4 times 3 equals 12. So if 4 times 3 equals 12, and this is a 1, that means this must also be 4. So 2 times 4 is 8, and we now have 8 over 12. So remember, the important things about finding equivalent fractions is you must be timesing the numerator and the denominator by the same number. If you're not times the numerator and denominator by the same number, you will not get an equivalent fraction. That's why we're using the ones. Because remember, 4 over 4 equals 1. just as 5 over 5 or 6 over 6 or whatever else, as long as the numerator is the same as the denominator. And when I use that with a fraction, I will get an equivalent fraction to this first fraction. That is lesson 79 for lesson practice Saxon 5.